or maybe for 10 minutes. And then the principal said, you can't cut school.
Imagine growing up with almost nothing, living in a tiny apartment, watching your parents struggle with alcoholism, and being raised mostly by your grandmother because your family simply couldn't hold itself together. Now imagine that same little girl growing up to become one of the most beloved entertainers in television history. A woman who would make millions laugh, win countless awards, influence generations of comedians, and still be celebrated well into her 90s. That woman is Carol Burnett. Today, at 92 years old, her name represents far more than comedy. It represents resilience, kindness, determination, and the extraordinary power of never giving up. But behind the legendary smile, behind the unforgettable laugh, and behind one of television's greatest careers, was a life filled with heartbreaking loss, impossible obstacles, and personal tragedies that audiences rarely saw. How did a shy girl from Hollywood, California, raised during the Great Depression, become America's comedy queen? And why do so many stars still call her the greatest entertainer television has ever produced? The answer begins long before fame, long before television, and long before the Carol Burnett Show changed entertainment forever. Carol Creighton Burnett was born on April 26, 1933, in San Antonio, Texas. Life was difficult almost from the beginning. Her parents both struggled with alcoholism. Their marriage slowly fell apart. Financial problems made everyday life uncertain. Eventually, Carol moved to Hollywood, California, where she was raised primarily by her grandmother, Mabel White. Although they had very little money, her grandmother gave Carol something far more valuable: belief. She constantly encouraged Carol to dream bigger than her circumstances. The two lived together in a tiny apartment. Sometimes they barely had enough money for food or rent. Entertainment became their escape. They spent hours watching movies together, laughing at comedians and imagining a better future. Without realizing it, those evenings planted the seeds of Carol's future career. At Hollywood High School, Carol discovered something surprising. She loved making people laugh. Unlike many students who feared performing in front of crowds, Carol felt completely alive on stage. Teachers immediately noticed her natural timing and expressive personality. Friends often laughed before she even finished telling a story. She possessed something that couldn't be taught: perfect comic timing. After graduating, Carol attended UCLA, originally planning to study journalism. But fate had other ideas. One acting class changed everything. The moment she stepped onto a theater stage, she realized journalism wasn't her calling. Performing was. There was only one problem. She had almost no money. College tuition became increasingly difficult to afford. At one point, Carol seriously considered abandoning her dream altogether. Then something extraordinary happened. A wealthy businessman who believed in young talent anonymously offered Carol a loan of $1,000 to help her move to New York and chase her dreams. The agreement was simple. If she ever became successful, she could repay the money whenever she was able. Years later, she did exactly that. With little more than determination and hope, Carol arrived in New York City. The city was exciting, but it was also unforgiving. She auditioned constantly. Most auditions ended the same way: "Thank you. We'll call you." The phone rarely rang. Money disappeared quickly. Some days she questioned whether she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. But quitting was never an option. She accepted small jobs, performed anywhere she could. Slowly, people began noticing the young woman with extraordinary facial expressions, fearless comedy, and remarkable singing ability. Broadway producers became interested. Television executives started paying attention. Then came the opportunity that changed everything. A single television appearance introduced Carol Burnett to millions of Americans. Almost overnight, the struggling actress who had once worried about paying rent became one of television's brightest new stars. But the greatest chapter of her career was only just beginning. Because soon, Carol Burnett wouldn't simply appear on television. She would completely reinvent what television comedy could be. By the early 1960s, Carol Burnett was no longer struggling to find work. Her unforgettable performances on Broadway and television had caught the attention of producers across America. Audiences loved her, critics praised her, and television executives realized they had discovered someone truly unique. Unlike many comedians of the era, Carol wasn't afraid to look silly. She didn't mind falling over, making exaggerated facial expressions, or laughing at herself if it meant making millions of viewers smile. That fearless style became her greatest strength. Soon, she became a regular guest on some of America's biggest television programs, including The Gary Moore Show, where her incredible talent reached an even wider audience. Week after week, viewers couldn't get enough of her. Before long, Carol had won her first Emmy Award. It was clear she wasn't simply another television personality. She was becoming one of the country's brightest entertainers. Then came an opportunity that would define her entire career. In the mid-1960s, CBS wanted Carol to star in her own television series. Many executives were hesitant. A woman leading a primetime comedy variety show was considered a huge financial risk. At the time, television was dominated by male hosts. Network executives doubted whether audiences would tune in every week to watch a female comedian. Carol disagreed. She believed comedy belonged to everyone. After years of negotiations, CBS finally honored a clause in her contract and gave her complete creative freedom. In September 1967, The Carol Burnett Show premiered. Almost immediately, it became one of the biggest successes in television history. The program blended comedy sketches, musical performances, celebrity guests, and hilarious improvisation into something audiences had never seen before. Every Saturday night, millions of families gathered around their televisions, not because they knew exactly what would happen, but because they knew Carol would make them laugh. One of the show's greatest strengths was its unforgettable cast. Harvey Korman's perfect comic timing, Tim Conway's unpredictable improvisation, Vicki Lawrence's remarkable versatility, and Lyle Waggoner's effortless charm created television magic. Their chemistry felt genuine. Many scenes became legendary simply because the actors couldn't stop laughing. Tim Conway, in particular, became famous for making the entire cast break character. Sometimes Harvey Korman laughed so hard he could barely continue speaking. Instead of editing those moments out, Carol left them in. Audiences loved watching genuine laughter. It made the show feel real. Soon, The Carol Burnett Show wasn't simply entertaining America. It was becoming part of American culture. One sketch after another entered television history. Perhaps none became more famous than Carol's unforgettable parody of Gone with the Wind. Wearing a dress made from green curtains, complete with the curtain rods still attached to her shoulders, Carol delivered one of the funniest entrances television has ever seen. The audience erupted before she even spoke. Decades later, people still consider it one of the greatest comedy moments ever filmed. As the years passed, awards continued pouring in. Emmy Awards, Golden Globes, People's Choice Awards. Critical acclaim seemed endless. More importantly, Carol earned something even more valuable: the respect of her fellow performers. Comedy legends openly admitted they had been inspired by her. Future stars studied her sketches. Young actresses finally saw proof that women could successfully lead major comedy shows. Without realizing it, Carol Burnett had broken one of Hollywood's biggest barriers. But while millions of viewers believed her life was filled only with laughter, behind the cameras, Carol faced heartbreaking personal struggles that would test her strength more than any television performance ever could. And those tragedies would reveal the extraordinary woman behind one of television's brightest smiles. To millions of television viewers, Carol Burnett seemed to have the perfect life. She made people laugh every week. She won awards. She became one of America's most beloved entertainers. But once the cameras stopped rolling, Carol faced heartbreak that no amount of success could erase. Like many great performers, she discovered that fame doesn't protect anyone from life's greatest tragedies. Over the years, Carol experienced failed relationships, personal disappointments, and unimaginable family pain. Although her career continued reaching new heights, she often admitted that balancing Hollywood with family life was never easy. Then came the loss that changed her forever. Her beloved daughter, Carrie Hamilton, inherited her mother's passion for acting and performing. Carol often described Carrie as talented, funny, and incredibly creative. The two shared a close relationship. But Carrie also faced serious personal struggles at a young age, battling addiction before eventually turning her life around with the unwavering support of her mother. Carol never gave up on her daughter. She stood beside her through treatment, setbacks, and recovery. Eventually, Carrie rebuilt her life and returned to acting and writing. For Carol, it felt like a new beginning. Together, mother and daughter even started writing a Broadway project, fulfilling a dream they had shared for years. Then, everything changed. In the late 1990s, Carrie was diagnosed with lung cancer. The diagnosis shocked the entire family. Carol put her career aside to spend as much time with her daughter as possible. She rarely left Carrie's side. Despite every treatment, despite every ounce of hope, Carrie Hamilton passed away in January 2002 at just 38 years old. No parent is ever prepared for that kind of loss. Years later, Carol admitted that losing Carrie was the greatest heartbreak of her life. She once said that although the pain never completely disappears, you learn to carry it. Instead of allowing grief to define her, Carol chose to honor her daughter's memory. She completed the Broadway project they had started together and dedicated it to Carrie. It became one of the most emotional achievements of her career. Even during the darkest moments, Carol continued inspiring others. She spoke openly about grief, resilience, and the importance of never losing hope. Fans admired her honesty. Many who had experienced similar losses found comfort in her words. As the years passed, Carol gradually stepped away from weekly television, but she never truly disappeared. She continued making guest appearances on popular shows, accepted Lifetime Achievement Awards, and remained a beloved figure in American entertainment. A new generation discovered her through streaming services and classic television reruns. Young comedians who had never grown up watching The Carol Burnett Show quickly understood why she was considered one of the greatest. Her influence could be seen everywhere. From sketch comedy, to sitcoms, to late-night television. Many of today's biggest stars, including comedians and actresses, have openly credited Carol Burnett as one of their greatest inspirations. By the time she reached her 90s, her achievements were almost impossible to count. Multiple Emmy Awards, Golden Globe Awards, a Grammy, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award, and perhaps most significantly, an entire generation of performers who followed the path she helped create. Today, at 92 years old, Carol Burnett remains one of the last living legends from television's golden age. She occasionally appears at award ceremonies and special events, always greeted with standing ovations that seem to last forever. Because audiences aren't simply applauding an actress. They're thanking someone who spent more than 6 decades bringing laughter into millions of homes. Looking back, it becomes clear that Carol Burnett's greatest achievement wasn't winning awards. It wasn't breaking television records. And it wasn't becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. It was making people feel better. For millions of families, her show became part of their weekly routine. People laughed together. Parents watched with their children. Grandparents introduced her comedy to future generations. Very few entertainers ever create that kind of connection. Carol Burnett did. Her story is proof that talent may open doors, but kindness, perseverance, and authenticity are what build a lasting legacy. From a little girl raised by her grandmother during difficult times, to becoming one of the most respected women in entertainment history, Carol Burnett's journey reminds us that even the hardest beginnings can lead to extraordinary endings. Because true legends aren't remembered simply for what they accomplished. They're remembered for how they made people feel. And after more than 70 years in entertainment, Carol Burnett has given the world something priceless. Laughter, hope, and memories that will never fade. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. What is your favorite Carol Burnett moment or sketch? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.